Oh, yeah.
Now, today we've got a special treat for you, friends. We are going to be talking about Zendikar Rising Limited. These are my favorite videos to do. It's a little limited guide. Now, of course, before we start, this is going up on StevensvilleGamers on YouTube, so if you're watching it there, go ahead and leave a like and a subscribe, and give us a little comment. Let me know, let us know what you think about this guide, if you found it helpful, if you have any contentions with it, if you think I missed the most important commons or uncommons in the archetype that you're excited to draft. And I'm also the host of a podcast called Gut Shot. It'd be super kind if you gave us a listen. Me and my co-host, Aggressive Rhetoric, talk magic every week on all your favorite podcast apps plus YouTube. Now, without further ado, let's discuss all of the archetypes in Zendikar Rising Limited and my thoughts on their strength and which cards you should be looking out for. White-blue party. Now, there's a powerhouse of a sort of extension tool at the top end of the curve of this deck, and it's Spoils of Adventure. It costs less for each creature in your party. On average, it's probably going to be 4 mana to gain 3 life and draw 3 cards, which is, it's a concentration, but you gain 3 life. But you can get it down to 3 mana, in which case it's insane, or 2 mana, in which case it is back-breaking. You could be doing that and playing a 4-drop on the same turn in the late game, which is no bueno for your opponent. There's a lot of cheap party creatures that just weren't included here. It's very easy to fill your 1- and 2-drop slots, especially 2-drop slots, with party creatures. And then, win through cards like Seafloor Stalker, which can become higher power and unblockable based on how many creatures are in your party. And you can activate that multiple times. If you have a lot of creatures in your party and you want to make them really big and unblockable. Shepherd of Heroes, which gives you a flyer and a bunch of life based on your party size. Skyclave Plunder, which at least lets you draw 3 cards, but if you have party members, it gives you some selection on those 3 cards. Or Emiria Captain, which is at least going to be a 2/2 Flying Vigilance for 4, but it's a 3/3 if you have another party creature, or a 4/4 if you have another party creature, or Lunk Alert, a 5/5 if you have a full party, which does include Emiria Captain. So, that's what you want to look out for at White-Blue Party. I think this is one of the stronger archetypes in Limited. Next, we've got Blue-Black Rogue/Mill. Now, you're not looking to mill your opponent all the way out with this deck. You just need them to have 8 cards in their graveyard for your sort of payoff rogues to be online. It's a very low-to-the-ground deck. As you can see, the Signpost Uncommon is only a 2-drop, and as long as your opponent has 8 or more cards in their yard, all your rogues get +1/0, so it's sort of like a Lord. He himself has Flash and Flying, and whenever one or more rogues you control attack, each opponent mills 2 cards. So he's very self-enabling. He's self-sustaining card that supports the rest of the cards in your deck. You've also got, an equipment that gets more powerful if your opponent has 8 cards in their deck, and some guys that will flash in, do something, and mill your opponent. And then just a rogue that can become unblockable and draw a card when he hits your opponent. Who doesn't love that? So this deck looks pretty low to the ground, pretty synergy reliant. A lot of the cards in this deck you're just not going to want to pick if you can't build this deck consistently, especially like Zulaport Duelist here or Sure-Footed Infiltrator and Mind Carver. They're really only good in this deck. This deck is cannibalistic in a way that some other archetypes aren't, so be wary of that. Only go into this if you're sure it's open, but it can be really powerful if you get the whole package going. Next is Black-Red Party. So this is another party deck, but in 2 other colors. It's a little bit more oriented toward cheapening powerful cards, whereas the other one is sort of into making your cards actually stronger. So here we've got Ravager's Mace. Enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control, like all the equipment in the set. And the equipped creature gets +1/0 for each creature in your party and has Menace, so that's pretty alright. This is probably the weakest Signpost uncommon, but the other uncommons and commons in this archetype are no joke. You've got Acquisitions Expert, 2 mana, 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, if it's the only creature you have, they just discard a card, but if you have other party members, they have to reveal that many cards, and then you choose one for them to discard. So it's sort of, trying to remember the name of Blackmail? Yeah, Blackmail, I think it was. Shatterskull Minotaur, Chonker with haste that costs less for your party. A card you wouldn't feel great playing for its full cost, but would be alright with playing for its full cost. But if you can play this guy for 4, that's just crazy awesome. That's great value. Deadly Alliance, a removal spell, an instant that costs less for each creature in your party, can hit creatures or planeswalkers. Yes, please. Grotog, a Bugcatcher, a common that is at least going to be a 2/2 trample when it attacks, if not a 3/2 trample or even a 4/2 trample. Great value, yeah. So this black-red party deck really wants to fill out its party as quick as possible, so it can cast big things for cheap and make your Grotag bug catchers be able to be big when they attack. Next we've got red-green Landfall. So this deck is pretty aggressive, and it just wants to make sure it hits its land drop every turn to trigger all your landfall abilities, and, where applicable, trigger multiple landfalls per turn. So we've got Brushfire Elemental, which is a red and a green for a haste, can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, and Landfall gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So the more lands you're able to play, the more sort of huge this guy that can't be blocked is, and it's got haste, that's mildly relevant. Skyclave Geopede Trampler that gets bigger with Landfall. Akum Hellhound is a 1-mana 0/1 that gets bigger with Landfall, so as you can see, the creatures kind of benefit from lands coming in. Roiling Regrowth is an instant version of Harrow, which is going to be really powerful in combat when you're swinging with like 2 landfall creatures, and you can Roiling Regrowth, trigger each of their landfalls twice. If you've got a Geopede and a Hellhound out, that's 8 more power at instant speed from this 3-mana spell, which is kind of insane. And it ramped you 1. And just beyond that is Kazandu Stomper. This is a great top end for the deck. It's a 6/5 trample for 6 that returns 2 lands you control to their owner's hands when it enters. You may. Or no, it's not may, you have to. But you want to in this deck, because you want to be able to hit a land drop every turn, or even multiple land drops a turn, so that you can fuel your landfall abilities. Green-white is also landfall. It's playing a little bit more of the long game, though. It wants creatures that put +1/+1 counters on themselves for landfall. You want to make sure you're hitting a land drop every turn so your guys can just get bigger and bigger. The Signpost Uncommon here is a Vigilant 2/3 for 2 that can tap to put a basic land from your hand onto the battlefield, or tap to return basic land you control to its owner's hand. So it allows you to literally ensure you will have landfall every turn, as well as be able to attack. So it's a fantastic Signpost Uncommon. We've got a Kicker spell that can grab basic land cards, or if you've ramped up to 8, it can grab basic land cards and put 2+1/+1 counters on all your guys. And then here we've also got 2 creatures that put a counter on themselves every time you have landfall. So Fearless Fledgling, which puts a counter on itself and gains flying, and Territorial Scythecat, which has trample and landfall gains a counter. So both great. And then Tazim Raptor is a Windrake that returns a land you control to its owner's hand when it comes in, or may, which you generally will want to ensure future land drops. So it'll sort of enable your landfall abilities, and it curves after Fearless Fledgling. So great card. So this is green-white landfall. Next we've got white-black Clerics. This one I'm really excited to draft with. It's sort of a Soul Sisters life gain style deck. There's actually like multiple pretty strong life gain enabling. There's multiple sort of a Johnny's Pridemate effects in this set. So Cleric Life's Blood. Whenever you gain life for the first time each turn, put a counter on him. So he's not quite Pridemate, but whenever another Cleric enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. So this guy's sort of the lifeblood of the deck. You're going to want to get as many copies of him as you can. They go crazy, synergizing with each other. Very powerful. Attended Healer makes a 1/1 cat every time you gain life for the first time each turn, and you can pay 3 to give another Cleric lifelink until end of turn, so she's the least self-sufficient on her own. She's literally a 4-mana 2/3, which is a little awkward, but if you pair her with any other Cleric, she can start going off. Scion of the Swarm is a 5-mana 3/3 flyer with the Johnny's Pridemate effect. Very good if you have a way to consistently gain life. Making a flyer bigger and bigger is awesome. Expedition Healer is a 2-mana 2/2 Vigilance, and as long as you have another Cleric, it has lifelink as well. So, a 2/2 Vigilance lifelink for 2 is pretty great and limited. And then we've got Marauding Blight Priest, which has the Veto ability. It's 3 for a 3/2 Vampire Cleric. Whenever you gain life, your opponent loses 1 life. So, if you have that gaining life every turn sort of synergy, or if you just curve this after Cleric of Lifespawn, like that's not unreasonable. Turn 2 Cleric of Lifespawn. Turn 3 play Marauding Blight Priest. Your opponent, you gain a life, your opponent loses a life, you put a counter on Cleric of Lifespawn, you swing, you're having a good time. It's a very strong combo. So that's white-black Clerics. Next we've got black-green +1/+1 counters. This one I don't think is super strong. It basically demands you build a Rube Goldberg device. You find a way to put a counter on something every turn, so you can keep returning Moss Pit Skeleton and sacrificing it to Shadowcat, and then maybe at the end of the turn you get something off your Iridescent Hornbeetle. Like there's standalone cards that have that sort of synergy, but there's also cards that like want you to sack and stuff. So there are several ways to sort of start looping Moss Pit Skeleton once you have enough mana and keep making your other guys bigger and bigger and drawing cards. But yeah, you've got Moss Pit Skeleton. You can kick it to make it come in with counters, and whenever counters are put on creatures, you can put them from your graveyard on top, back on top of your library. So you get them again, bring it back as a 5/5. That's the idea, anyway. Skyclave Shadowcat lets you sack other creatures to put a +1/+1 counter on him, and whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, you draw a card, which includes him. So, you know, as long as you're sacking creatures with counters, you're drawing cards, or once he dies, if he's got counters on him, you get to draw a card. So, pretty helpful. Iridescent Hornbeetle gives you a 1/1 at your end step for each counter you've put on your creatures this turn. Hagra Constrictor, 3 mana, basically 2/2, because it enters with 2 counters. And each creature you control with counters on it has Menace. And then Gnarlid Colony, a kicker card, 2 mana, 2/2. Or, if you kick it, 5 mana, 5/5, and each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has Trample. So that is the black-green counters archetype. Next, we've got green-blue kicker. Now, this one really thrives in the late game. That's the idea. So the Signpost Uncommon is a 3 mana 2/4 that taps for a green or a red, and whenever you cast a kicked spell, you gain 2 life. So that's pretty great, just on its own. Just being a mana dork and being able to block all the bears in this set, which there are a lot of bears. The casting a kick spell gaining 2 life is not as relevant, but this card I'm never going to be sad to have copies of. Vine Gecko makes your kicker spells cheaper, and whenever you cast a kicker spell, he gets bigger, so he can eventually swing. Merfolk Falconer is a 5 mana 4/4 flyer, already fine. Whenever you cast a kicked spell, scry 2. That's going to make sure that you're sort of just getting a kick spell every turn, because you're just going to be able to keep digging for them, getting rid of lands when you don't want them. Reclaim the Wastes is a sorcery for a green that lets you just fetch a basic land and put it in your hand, or you can kick it for 3, fetch 2 basic lands, and put them in your hand. This will help with the Landfall deck as well, making sure you don't miss your Landfall triggers, but the kicker deck wants to go late game. They want to spend a lot of mana on some of their higher curve stuff, so making sure you have those lands and the ability to kick this to make it synergize with your kicker spells is going to be pretty useful. So then we've got Into the Royal, which is the OG version of Blink of an Eye. It's 1 and a blue for an instant. Kicker, 1 and a blue. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If the spell is kicked, draw a card. So it's like a retroactive remand for 4 mana, basically. Or, you know, if you're in a pinch, you can just bounce something for 2. But this kind of thing is great. Like, let's say you have Vine Gecko out. This is only 3 mana to bounce something, draw a card, put a counter on your Vine Gecko. You got Falconer out, you scry 2. Like, all of these good kicker spells just get so much better when you've got the synergy cards out. And the synergy cards are mostly uncommon, but they're not too hard to draft. You should be able to build this deck relatively easily. Just be wary that it wants to go in the late game, and there are a lot of aggro decks that can pressure it really well, like especially the red-green Landfall deck. That's the only thing to be cautious of. So next we've got blue-red, drumroll please. It's fucking prowess again. I guess some of them can trigger on wizards too, but it's the prowess deck. It's spell slingers. You want to draft blue-red in the set? You want to do something interesting? No, you're going to cast instants and sorceries. You rube. You idiot. You cad. Umara Mystic is 1 a blue and a red for 1/3 Merfolk Wizard with flying. Whenever you cast an instant, sorcery, or wizard spell, Umara Mystic gets +2/0 until end of turn. So this is actually pretty good. This is the kind of thing that could see standard play. This is just Wee Dragonauts, but it also triggers on wizards, as my co-host on my podcast pointed out. And Wee Dragonauts has been pretty good and limited when it's shown up, so yeah, I mean, this will probably be fine. They're decent, cheap instants and sorceries, especially in blue and red. And it also triggers on wizards. So Windrider Wizard is a 2/2 flyer for 3. Whenever you cast an instant, sorcery, or wizard spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Lets you loot when you cast instant sorceries or wizards, and it's a Windrake. You love Windrake. Windrake is good. Rockslide Sorcerer is a 4 mana 3/3 wizard. Whenever you cast an instant, sorcery, or wizard spell, Rockslide Sorcerer deals 1 damage to any target. So you basically have to be double spelling to kill anything, but he does let you ping your opponent if you're not able to do that. And then Tazim Royal Mage is a 2 mana 2/1 with Kicker 4, and if you kick it, you get to return an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So we've seen this on a 1/3 in Dominaria, and it was fine. I think it'll be better on a 2 mana 2/1, especially if this deck wants to get aggressive. It's a wizard, so it itself triggers your pseudo-prowess wizards, which is really helpful. And, yeah, the instant or sorcery it gets back will also trigger them. It's just designed, it's a 6-drop so that it's designed that you can't play it and play the spell in the same turn, which is probably for the best. Then we got Fissure Wizard, 2 mana, 2/1, Goblin Wizard. When it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. This doesn't really have a lot of synergy with the archetype, but it's a wizard, and it's one of the better 2-drops in the set. It's a bear that lets you filter. That's pretty fine. You don't mind to have a couple copies of that cute little guy. So yeah, this is blue-red prowess. Next is a red-white warriors/equipment. This is the last archetype. Kargan War Leader is just a 3 mana 3/3 warrior lord. You probably want to grab as many of these as you can if you're in white-red, because most of your creatures are going to be warriors. Gomafada Vanguard is a 2 mana 2/2 human warrior. When it attacks, target creature an opponent controls with power less than or equal to the number of warriors you control can't block this turn. That's fine. Core Blade Master is a 2 mana 1/1 double strike, and equipped warriors you control have double strike. So any equipment you can get, you slap on a warrior, they immediately have double strike, which is pretty strong. There's a lot of equipment, and all the equipment attaches automatically, so stuff you should keep an eye out for if you're able to draft this uncommon. Expedition Champion is a 3 mana 2/3, but he's a 4/3 if you have another warrior, so 3 mana 4/3 is above rate. Not much else to say about that. Next, we've got Seagate Banneret. It's a 1 mana 1/2, and you can pay 5 to have creatures you control get +1/1 until end of turn. So this deck obviously wants to go wide, a lot of good cheap creatures, and this guy enables that. You know, late in the game, you might have 5 lands. You're probably not going to have 10 lands, but activating this guy is not going to be hard, and it is going to be an Anthem at instant speed. So yeah, you're going to want to grab as many copies of this as you can. It's a 1-drop that's worth playing in Limited, and there's not many of those. Couple things that I wanted to note since we're done with the archetypes to pay attention for in Limited. A lot of these equipments are better than they would be in most Limited formats because they attach automatically. Utility Knife, you know, it costs 3 to equip, but it comes down for 1, and equipped creature gets +1/1. You can throw it on a flyer, and then later you can equip it to whatever you need. Cliffhaven Kitesail makes a creature have flying, and it equips for just 2, so it's not that hard to put onto something else when you're done with it, and that's going to be really useful for gummed up board states. Time will tell whether these are main board or sideboard cards that demand a specific situation in order to be useful, but I just wanted to point out both of these are at common, and they're pretty strong. If you have flyers, you're going to want to put Utility Knife in, and if you think you're going to be losing to gummed up board states, you want to put Cliffhaven Kitesail in. They're good equipments, especially because you get to equip them for free when they come in. So the other thing I wanted to make note of, these cards are really good. There are cards in this set that can be played as spells or can be played upside down as lands. Not upside down, but flipped over as lands that come in tapped. You should pick these over most other things just because the opportunity cost of including them is so low. They can be the spell or they can be your land drop for turn. On turn 1, you're probably not going to play anything else, so you're fine with putting one of these in tapped. Yeah, go for these. They're pretty much all fine cards. There's some blue ones and white ones that are too situational to be good, and there's a black one that just drains your opponent for 4. Those ones, maybe don't pick them over something good, but like these should be picked over pretty much any uncommon in the set just because you don't actually have to devote a card slot in your deck to playing them. They can take up a land slot in your deck. So that's my advice when it comes to these things. They're pretty strong. Prioritize them pretty hard. But yeah, that is that. That will be the end of Fred's Magic Hour for today. Again, I want to advise you, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, and check out my podcast, Gutshot, which I co-host with Aggressive Rhetoric. We talk about all things magic, and some things not. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Remember, the world is a better place for having you in it.